It started in the heart of South Central Los Angeles, a stretch known as the Low Bottoms. For decades, that area between Vernon and Slauson, Main and Central, has been home to generations of Mexican-American families. But under the same skyline, two Latino gangs, Florencia 13 and the Eastside Playboys, would turn those streets into one of the most violent rivalries in South LA history. Their story isn't one of random violence. It's a generational feud born from overlapping neighborhoods, old grudges, and the blurred lines between loyalty and survival. The Eastside Playboys weren't always a gang. In the 1950s, they began as the Southern California Latin Playboys Car Club, a group of young Chicano men who spent weekends building lowriders and showing off their cars around West Los Angeles. They wore matching jackets and polished chrome, not gang colors. But Los Angeles was changing. The city's Latino population was growing, and many working-class families were being pushed south toward Vernon South Park and Huntington Park. By the 1970s, the Playboys' younger generation had turned from a social club into a street gang. Their territory extended from Vernon to Slauson, with another section still active near Pico and Catalina, their original barrio. Meanwhile, Florencia 13 had already become one of the biggest Latino gangs in Los Angeles. Based in the Florence-Firestone district, F13's history stretched back to the post-war era, when Mexican-American veterans formed neighborhood cliques for protection. By the late 1960s, their influence spread across South LA, with members identifying under the Sureño banner and aligning with the Mexican Mafia's growing structure. By the 1980s, South Los Angeles was a map of invisible borders. The Eastside Playboys controlled much of South Park and parts of Vernon, while Florencia 13 expanded north toward those same blocks. The two gangs had different origins, but their territories overlapped in the Low Bottoms, a few miles that would define decades of violence. Throughout the 1990s, tension simmered. Drive-bys, graffiti crossouts, and street fights became common signs of disrespect. Though both were under the Sureño umbrella, that alliance meant little in practice. Respect and territory came first, and when the streets are that close together, it only takes one spark to ignite years of conflict. The 2000s marked the point of no return. The uneasy tension between Florencia 13 and the Eastside Playboys exploded into open warfare. June 10, 2007, East 54th Street, Los Angeles. 31-year-old Pablo Lopez was at a child's birthday party with his cousin. It was a Sunday afternoon. Music, food, laughter, until gunfire erupted from an alley behind the home. Lopez was struck multiple times while trying to run for cover. He collapsed near the street and later died in surgery. Detectives said he wasn't a gang member but may have been mistaken for someone affiliated with the Eastside Playboys. The neighborhood fell silent. June 15, 2007, South Los Angeles. Just days later, Freddie Morales and Frank Rivera were standing outside when a car rolled up. The passenger leaned out and opened fire. Freddie was killed instantly. Frank survived his wounds. Detectives connected the shooting to the same ongoing feud between Florencia 13 and the Eastside Playboys. No one wanted to testify, not out of loyalty, but fear. June 16, 2009, Wall Street, Los Angeles. 2 years later, the violence struck again. Manuel Hernandez was driving with his friend Jesse Alvarez and his daughter when a beige Camry suddenly cut them off. 4 men inside appeared to be from a local set. The car reversed, trapping them. A man jumped out and opened fire, hitting Hernandez's car and another behind them. David Rios, who sat in that second vehicle, was shot in the chest and grazed across the head. Hernandez managed to memorize the plate number before calling 911. Detectives later arrested Henry Mendoza, identified as a member of the Eastside Playboys. He was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 40 years to life. By the end of the 2000s, the line between the two gangs had turned into a war zone. Parents warned their kids not to wear certain colors or walk down specific streets. The violence wasn't random anymore. It was routine. April 1st, 2016, 39th Street, Los Angeles. On a spring afternoon, Nelson Ortiz and Oscar Martinez stood outside talking when a blue sedan crept up. A man stepped out, asked, "Where you from?" and began firing. Ortiz was shot 3 times, in the chest, thigh, and arm. Martinez was hit in both legs. Both survived. Days later, LAPD detectives arrested Jose Little Tech Gonzalez, a known Eastside Playboys member. A search of his home revealed a handgun, drugs, and a phone containing screenshots of a news article about the shooting. Gonzalez was convicted of 2 counts of attempted murder and sentenced to 50 years to life. September 30th, 2016, South Los Angeles. Just months later, the feud claimed another life, this time on the Florencia 13 side. Anthony Perez, a 22-year-old Florencia 13 member, was hanging out with friends when Omar Castillo told him he'd been shot days earlier by someone from Eastside Playboys territory. Another associate, Jesus Sanchez, proposed driving through their area to find whoever did it. They borrowed a van, drove through South Park, and spotted a man on the sidewalk. Sanchez pointed at him, ordered, "Get him." When Perez hesitated, Sanchez got out, chased the man down, and shot him 3 times. The victim, Carlos Ramirez, was killed instantly. Hours later, the suspect's Chrysler was pulled over by Highway Patrol. Thinking they were being stopped for the murder, all 4 men ran. Forensics later confirmed the gun recovered matched the bullets from the crime scene. Jesus Sanchez was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 50 years to life. By the late 2000s, the feud between Florencia 13 and Eastside Playboys had left scars across the low bottoms. The violence had spanned nearly 2 generations. LAPD and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department launched targeted operations to reduce retaliation shootings, focusing on both gangs. Gang injunctions were enforced, preventing known members from associating or entering designated areas. Curfews, warrant sweeps, and RICO-style cases hit the upper ranks of both sets. Still, officials admitted arrests couldn't erase the deep history behind the feud. Inside the community, families who'd lost loved ones tried to move forward, but the damage was lasting. The streets themselves had changed, old hangouts boarded up, murals fading, new residents moving in without knowing the blood that had been spilled on those corners. Florencia 13 and Eastside Playboys 13 still exist today. Their numbers have shifted, and their presence isn't as visible as it once was, but the tension hasn't completely disappeared. The neighborhoods they once fought over remain divided by history. To outsiders, it might seem like a simple turf war, but to the families who lived it, this rivalry represents years of loss. Sons, brothers, cousins, gone too soon. The story of Florencia 13 and the Eastside Playboys isn't just about 2 gangs. It's about how close proximity and pride can destroy entire communities. It's about how one misunderstanding, one act of retaliation, can echo for decades. In South Los Angeles, the line between respect and survival is razor thin, and the cost of loyalty has always been the same. That's the breakdown. I would ask you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. More stories coming soon. Until then, watch your step and respect the streets.